In the context of American education, a storm of ideology is gathering force, making a stark departure from the universally accepted ideals of merit and achievement. This storm, fueled by the removal of advanced courses and a level of indoctrination, challenges the pillars of fairness and opportunity. Central to this shift is a divisive narrative casting students not by their achievements, but by their race, in the roles of oppressors and the oppressed. So the question is, what's fueling this ideological shift? And why are our schools becoming arenas where educational content is being revised to support an underlying premise of injustice between the oppressors and the oppressed? My name is Jim Connor. Welcome to Game Changers Silicon Valley. Tonight, we examine the true impact of these emerging narratives in our educational system and ultimately on the American values of fairness and opportunity. My guests are Diana Bloom and Christina Lindenbach. Christine, Diana, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Diana, since you had a large part in the movie, Killing America, can you give us an overview of how you got engaged, where you came from and how you got engaged in this type of a movement?
So I was born in the former Soviet Union, and when I was 4 years old, my family decided to immigrate, primarily so that as Jews, we can have the freedom to practice our religion and not feel like we would be persecuted. And so we, after a year in Italy, which was the typical immigration process, I ended up in San Francisco. We didn't have any family here and really didn't experience any anti-Semitism growing up. However, my kids today are having a very different experience, and that is primarily why I got involved with the movie. During the pandemic is when I realized something very wrong was happening in our schools.
Okay, well, we'll get into that a little bit. Christine, thanks for coming today, and you have really a large, dominant role in the promotion and ongoing issues with this movie and this movement. How did you get involved? What happened? Did you wake up one day and say, hey, something's wrong here?
Well, actually, that's exactly what happened. In 2021, the San Francisco School Board removed merit-based admissions from a nationally ranked high school that had a selective admissions process named Lowell High School. This movement was sort of swept the country after the injustice that happened with George Floyd, happened at Boston Latin, Thomas Jefferson, Lowell. A friend of mine called me up after we listened to the school board dismantle merit-based admissions, substituting in a lottery type of admissions scheme. And we decided that we would sue the school board to restore meritocracy and merit-based admissions. Eli Steele heard about me, the lawsuit, and our successful litigation, and asked if he could film me and hear the story of what happened at Lowell, which was basically an attempt to remove merit-based admissions and thereby remove whites and Asians from Lowell High School.
Was that the motivation of the school board then to change the composition of students being admitted by race?
If you read the San Francisco Chronicle and all of the news articles, it was very obvious that the school board had one mission, and that was to remove Asians and whites and substitute them with students from other ethnic backgrounds.
Can I ask the justification for doing that, if there was one?
The justification was really clear. In the name of equity, the school board decided that they had to change the admissions policy, and instead of improving education for all students across the board, they played this sort of whack-a-mole where they substituted one group out for the other and then said, problem solved, but they didn't solve the problem. They literally ended up placing students in the school who were not academically prepared for the rigors of an academic high school like Lowell. And by the end of the first semester, we had at least 200 kids with a D or an F at the end of the year. And these students who were, gifted, wonderful kids just had not received the education that they needed in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to basically compete at that level. And they became pawns in a very disingenuous political game that was foisted upon San Francisco by the progressive members of the school board in San Francisco, many of whom were then later recalled.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Yes, thankfully. 89% of San Francisco voted to recall these school board members. And recently, in the March election, San Franciscans voted to restore algebra to the 8th grade, which was also dismantled by the progressive Democrats in San Francisco, who removed algebra from 8th grade more than 10 years ago.
Thank you for that. That's very insightful. Diane, I want to come back to you then. Your child was attending Menlo Atherton, I believe. Is that high school?
Menlo Atherton High School.
And then you suddenly were shocked one day, I think. You saw some of the content that was being taught and given to her. Can you give us an overview or insight?
So actually, I have two kids in Menlo Atherton. One is a senior and one is a freshman. When my freshman was in middle school is when I first heard of this ethnic studies class that the governor was making mandatory for graduation. And there was some controversy at the time about ethnic studies and that it may have been anti-Semitic. And I know that there was an uproar within the Jewish community. So at the time, I was reassured by the Jewish organizations that were bringing their concerns about ethnic studies, that there were guardrails that were going to be in place to protect the Jewish students. So part of me wanted to understand what exactly was going to be taught. And that was my first realization that what in theory was ethnic studies was not in practice what ethnic studies was. Everything was basically defined by oppressor, oppressed in a power lens. And it reminded me very similar of what my family used to talk about, the Soviet culture and how things were, grouped into the rich and the poor. And this was just a very different way of using race to categorize people in the same.
So this was your oldest child?
No. So my oldest child was already in high school, but that law did not go into effect. So she actually was not subject to it.
And so what's been the effect on your younger, is it daughter you said?
Yeah, so this year is when she is exposed to it. So I looked at the curriculum and there was designing race lessons. There was race sorting. A girl in one of the ethnic studies class was asked to stand in front of the classroom while everybody proceeded to guess her race. And I say this, it's unbelievable that in 2024 we are grouping kids based on immutable characteristics. My daughter spent a week drawing an identity flower, and even they have different colored crayons to show the different color skin. It's emphasis and overemphasis on immutable characteristics that I don't see how it is helping our society.
It seems to be building divisions, tribalism, if you will, among the students themselves, that you're white, you're black, you're brown, you're green, you're whatever.
And then through this concept of intersectionality, they're pegging groups of students against each other. So it's some students have more rights to speak than others, and this is all based on immutable characteristics.
I've never heard of this. Some students have more rights to speak based on the group they've been assigned by race. Is that correct?
So yes, it has to do with a concept they define as lived experience. So if you are of a certain race, you have that lived experience, you're allowed to speak, and someone who's not of that race should really take a step back.
Okay, well, thank you for that insight. Christine, you've got a fascinating and insightful family background about your father growing up in Germany in the 1930s. Maybe you can share with us that experience.
Sure, I'd be happy to. My father is an immigrant, came to the United States in 1952 after World War II, was born and raised in Germany, and suffered like so many other people under Hitler's fascist regime, and literally warned me when I started, I told him, hey, Dad, look what they're doing to Lowell High School. And he said, this is exactly how the indoctrination began in Germany, where students were separated or grouped, that there were people blamed. One group was blamed for the suffering of the others. And it really, my father's going to be 100 years old, and it raised alarm bells for him because he's seen this history, and his lived history is one that is important to, he wants us all to know that we need to not allow this grouping to occur, because this is how the Holocaust actually was able to take foot in Germany.
Yeah, there's some great movie scenes you see of two kids grew up together. One got into that propaganda area and one didn't. And then later in life, the one who got into it is faced with the decision of turning in their childhood friend
Right, and
for being Jewish or something.
It's crazy. I mean, for example, in San Francisco, recently, Carol Kosovar, she's a journalist and an education expert. She published an article about San Francisco Unified School District and what they're teaching with this their ethnic studies curriculum, and they have this doctrine of blaming white people in the curriculum. For example, it says that punctuality is a construct of whiteness, that perfectionism is a construct of whiteness, and labeling these types of things, these attributes that used to be, meritocratic values. It's a very dangerous thing, and this is happening up and down the state of California. It's something that everybody should be aware of. Every parent should ask to see, since Governor Newsom mandated, an ethnic studies class for graduation, what is being taught to students about these power dynamics. It's not like when Diane and we both went to Lowell High School. We both believed in that, in meritocracy and making something of oneself. And what you see now is that there's this sort of culture of enabling and blaming and shaming that is really dividing our students. And I think that's why you see so much violence and bullying in the schools today.
What was your experience about this issue? How did your daughter take it? Let's put it that way. Did she say, this can't be right? Or did she say, well, I'm wondering about this? And did she show the material to you and talk about it, or did you just see it?
I had an idea that when I reviewed the curriculum, that there was going to be problem lessons. So I asked her to be honest with me and share those. What's interesting is that she is afraid to actually discuss the discomfort that she feels about this in the classroom. She feels that her grade would be affected if she brought up some of the issues. So she just wants to get through. I find that we have to shed light on this, because if every kid is sitting in a classroom feeling like they cannot speak up, then how is that education? I just don't see,
Does she have any friends that express a shared concern?
It's interesting. There's a couple of kids that she knows she can talk to about this that also are equally upset or feeling like they can't speak up. But this is something that they talk about in private. This is not something they would talk about in school even.
So there's a kind of condemnation. If you speak up, you're not going to get a grade. You may even be...
Well, you'll be labeled a racist.
I see. It's that severe.
Oh, yes. So, and this is an issue because even within our Jewish community, even after October 7th, a lot of folks still don't see the connection between this oppressor-oppressed power lens framework and the hate that our kids are experiencing on a daily basis. And I think it's because, as Jews, we definitely, our heart bleeds for the underdog, but we don't define ourselves as victims, even though our history may want to group us that way. We want to define ourselves as resilient and able to get through difficult circumstances. But that's not what's glorified in these lessons. Actually, what's glorified is victimhood. And a lot of kids are, they're looking for ways to show that they are in that oppressed category.
I think it was last night, this young man at the screening said, I had to play the party line to get this position I wanted within either the school council or some representation. The young man that spoke at your...
Right. So Eli's film, Killing America, basically highlights what's going on with this, what they call liberated ethnic studies, which is different from just traditional ethnic studies where you learn about cultures. I remember as a little kid in the 70s, we watched this show called The Big Blue Marble, and they would take you to different places and you'd learn about students or people from different regions. Liberated ethnic studies, which is currently what's being taught in California, is one that is all about powers and systems of power and how to basically teach kids to, not like other students and blame them. Jacob, who's in the film, he explained that he repeatedly has had to write essays at his school that mirror what the teacher wants to hear and not what he really believes, because he knows that if he writes an essay that reflects his critical thinking skills, that he will be marked down, and that he has actually witnessed students who actually contradicted the teacher receive lower grades, specifically because they did not sort of toe the party line. And you have to ask yourself, is this, a Soviet-style way of teaching? Is this, this is the exact teaching that occurred in Nazi Germany. It's the same method that you saw in the Soviet Union and in other fascist regimes. And the question is, why is this being taught, and why is this acceptable? I think every parent should ask their child at home tonight, have you ever had to write something in your class that you didn't believe in because you knew that if you did write what you reflected, your teacher would not approve?
I just want to ask you about this liberated versus regular ethnic studies. And what I think I'm hearing is liberated is a whole nother political ballgame. Is that correct?
That's correct. The people that are trying to teach liberated ethnic studies, they're the individuals that they don't believe that the United States has the right to exist. They don't believe that people should be owning land in this country. It's a very, very insidious movement, and that's why there's a pushback now. And in the film Killing America, you'll see that the Institute for Liberal Jewish Values and other organizations, specifically many of those combating anti-Semitism, are really trying to lobby the state for an ethnic studies curriculum that is not one that is filled with these oppressive power structures. I don't know why a 6-year-old in a public school should be asked to define what their race is, or ask the question, are you, as a 6-year-old white child, an oppressor? I think 6-year-olds need to learn, how to count and do those types of things that are, building on their education. Recently, a study showed that we're spending so much time teaching ethnic studies that the greatest national threat to our security is not another country, but it's the lack of an educated population in the United States. And sitting here in Silicon Valley, so close to the Computer Museum and the hub of innovation, it makes me really worry about what is the future for this country.
To the extent that you have insights to other parents, like you knew a couple of the parents, but they were kind of like not sure. What do you see in San Francisco? Is there any kind of awareness? Because San Francisco did vote out the school board. They did vote out this prosecutor who wasn't doing a very good job either. Is there any awareness growing there?
I believe that San Francisco is on the cusp of teaching the rest of the United States why every parent, whether you're sitting in a farm in Iowa, whether you're in New York, Florida, you need to wake up and see what's going on here. They always say that San Francisco is this bastion of liberalism. Well, 89,000 individuals who are, registered Democrats joined with Republicans and independents to remove these very dangerous people from our school
Chastain,
board.
I believe, was the guy's name. Right?
But he was the DA. We recalled him too. But the 3 members of the school board, one who'd actually called Chinese people the House N-word in a tweet, was recalled because of her blatant racism toward Chinese people.
And Diana, do you think there's any movement going on?
I think parents are much more aware now. I think parents are actually asking the kids about what they're studying, which, I didn't do that 3 years ago, and most parents didn't even do that before October 7th. Our problem right now is that the teachers are hiding the material. So we will request the material and they will not show it to us. And then we do a public records request, an official one, and they will delay, delay, delay. Their lawyers keep saying we need more time. I am yet to have not one piece of paper, the document that I requested back in January. So that's 3 months now. So our problem is there's no accountability. So the parents are, now paying attention, now wanting to see, but we're being blocked by the schools and the administrators.
You are the attorney. You know how to get a public records release, I believe. How do you do that?
Well, we can be happy to post that online or give insight. You can go to Friends of Lowell, which is our website for the Friends of Lowell Foundation that we started when we were trying to save Lowell High School. We have a lot of information. What's very interesting is that all over the country, people are asking to see Eli Steele's film, Killing America. We're going up to Canada, to Toronto, actually. We're going to Florida, New York. Education and the restoration of meritocracy should not be a partisan issue. Parents want the best for their children. When 65.4% of entering freshmen in our universities have to take remedial math,
Really? 65%.
according to latest studies from 2019, I can just...
All universities or California universities?
I believe it's from a study from the National Center of Education Studies. This is significantly higher than the rate was just in 2016 when it was 14%. So we're going the wrong way. And I never thought that math and algebra and advocating for educational advancement would become so controversial. But we as a nation really have to ask ourselves, what are we teaching our students, and are we doing right by them by grouping all these kids and holding them back?
You've really been both very insightful, and I've learned a great deal, and I saw the film last night, but you adding this to the conversation brings a greater understanding on my part. Again, I, as a person living here in Silicon Valley, I was not aware of it. I knew there were issues, but I thought the issues were just subtle exceptions, frankly. Mm-hmm. But after this, I have a totally different awareness. And so what's your message to parents?
I think my message is actually larger than just to parents. I think it's to the United States in general. We need to start celebrating the fact that we are Americans. We live in the greatest country in the world. People are flocking here. They're running over the border for a reason. We have become complacent as a society and forgotten to recognize how lucky we are to live here, and that the foundations of our country, the freedom that was given to us, is something that we cannot take for granted. And we must ask our legislatures and our elected officials to take off their partisan hats and ask themselves, are they doing right by our students and our society by making education such a partisan issue? We need to get back to celebrating and being proud of who we are as a nation. We're not a perfect nation, but we're far better than the rest. And I'd like to see that taught in our schools again.
Diana, any closing thoughts from you?
Yes, I think the November election is right around the corner, and the best thing we can do is for accountability, vote the people out who got us into this mess. So I think that, in our state especially, we have a lot of people that voted for bad policy like AB 101. AB 101 needs to be repealed. And the more...
What is AB 101?
AB 101 is what the Governor Newsom made ethnic studies into law, and it's now mandatory for kids who graduate high school to take this class. This class is not standardized. I mean, the teachers are bringing TikTok videos, YouTube videos. I mean, there's no standardization. That's why, these horrible lessons are getting in. So until we fix ethnic studies, I think it needs to be repealed. And for me, that's one of the things I'm going to be working on, is getting more parents in this state activated to maybe put a ballot initiative on. We need to repeal AB 101.
And watch Killing America.
And watch Killing America.
Okay, so you are the one of the main characters in Killing America, and we'll make the links to the movie either to view it one way or another available on our blog about this. And you're involved. You're also in the movie too.
I'm in the movie, and I'm also was made the associate producer.
Oh, you were.
And so what we are asking is for people to go to Eli Steele's Substack or his website at Man of Steel Productions to learn more about the film, see the trailer. It's a really important thing that Americans come together and we build on something positive. And Eli's film in 38 minutes is a film that every parent in the United States should see, because what's happening in California in our schools, in San Francisco, in Menlo Atherton, it's happening all over the United States.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about donations to the effort.
Well, Eli Steele's father, Shelby Steele, who wrote the famous book, here we go, you can read it right here, the content of our character. The Shelby Steele Foundation is our 501c3 sponsor. So all tax-deductible donations will go toward making sure that this film is seen. And then hopefully in the fall, there will be an online streaming event. But right now we're trying to get this panel together to go all over the country to spread the message of hope that we believe that better days for education in this country are to come.
Very good. Well, Christine Lindenbach and Diane Bloom, you guys are really game changers. Frankly, you're out there doing it up front of everybody. I'm just so happy to have you in the show. And we got you here before you were world famous, so I always like to do that. And I want to wish you every success going forward. Always let me know if there's anything I can do to assist you in your effort.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us in this episode. If you gain insights from this conversation, you can share this show with your network and ask them to subscribe. You can view all shows at our website, GameChangers.tv, as well as the podcast, Game Changers Silicon Valley. We look forward to your continued interest in upcoming shows.